Good afternoon. Today is Lag BaOmer. It is the day of the birth and the passing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who is the author of the Zohar, and said, I am tied to God with one knot. I am unified with Him. I am inflamed with Him. And I am one with Him. And the Rebbe, on this day, 57 years ago, said that when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was alive, he said that I can bring forgiveness for the world until Mashiach comes. And therefore any kind of inequity of the people of Israel, the merit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai stands by us and protects us. And the Rebbe said at that date, Kedaihu Rabbi Shimon lismech alav b'shas hatchak. Rabbi Shimon is sufficient to rely upon him when things are difficult. Now that was said 57 years ago. Yesterday was Parshas Behar, which preceded Lag BaOmer, as it did 57 years ago. And the amazing thing is that the Parsha Behar has 57 verses in it. Exactly 57. And the number 57 is 3 times 19, 19 being the solar cycle that is unified with the lunar cycle. Every 19 years, the days of the moon and the days of the sun correlate to each other, correspond to each other almost exactly the same. So that the difference in the lunar year and the solar year is measured in small, tiny little increments, not in large increments, and the solar year and the lunar year parallel each other every 19 years. And so this is 3 times 19, 3 cycles, which establishes what is called the Chazokeh. And the events that took place then, 57 years ago, I was a witness to it. I was in Israel. The Egyptians vowed to destroy Israel. The Egyptians had unified themselves with the Syrians, with the Iraqis, and got the Jordanians to also declare that they were going to fight Israel. And the end result, of course, was a tremendous victory for Israel. And one could say, but we've been at war for the last 8 months, and so why is it similar? The answer is, just as then there was danger to gathering people together, and this expressed itself at the gravesite of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in Meron 57 years ago. The Israeli government prohibited a large gathering that usually gathers at the gravesite of Rabbi Shimon, and this year they did the same thing for the same reason. The Iranians who fund Hamas and fund Hezbollah and the Houthis, as well as other numerous terrorist organizations, the Iranians declared that they were going to step it up and attack Israel, and that their goal is the destruction of Israel. And so the events, the details of the events are dissimilar, but the general lines of the events are the same. 57 years ago, we read Behar the day before Lag BaOmer. Behar has 57 verses. That's not a coincidence. We haven't had a year like this in 57 years. And just as then, there were miracles that happened for Klal Yisrael, they will happen again this time. What we need to do is need to take stock of ourselves and not be intimidated, not just not be intimidated by the Iranians, but not be intimidated by reporters, not be intimidated by the newscasters. The newscasters are all heavily anti-Jewish, anti-Israel. And we seem to be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of them. We're not engaged in genocide. In fact, the only ones that are engaged in genocide are Hamas, the Hezbollah, the Houthis, and the Iranians. They want to kill every Jew. They want to destroy Israel. That's genocide. We are fighting to get Hamas out of Gaza. That's not genocide. In fact, the casualties of civilians versus combatants is almost 1-to-1, which is an unheard of ratio. The Americans killed over 3-to-1, 3 civilians for every 1 combatant in Afghanistan and Iraq. That's the ratio usually in a war. Here the ratio is 1-to-1. And we're still accused of genocide. And just because the ICG and the Hague, all of these places are calling for Israel to stop, that's just because we're winning. And Israel should not stop. They should go forward. They should go forward and destroy Hamas and then eventually destroy Hezbollah. And if necessary, destroy the Ayatollah in Iran. The most important thing is not to be intimidated. Just as then there was danger and people didn't know what to do, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe then said, there's nothing to be afraid of. I was one of 32 boys. The 32 boys all stayed in Israel. There was a young man by the name of Spector. His parents had a cousin who worked for Arthur Goldberg in the ambassador to the United Nations office. And he came to see the Rebbe, Plumrish, apparently to have a message from the United Nations to the Rebbe. And the young man, who was the cousin of the Spector, said, Rebbe, I'm not going to pull your leg. I have nothing from Arthur Goldberg, nothing from the president. I just have a request from my cousins. Rebbe, send the boy home. He's an only child. Send him home. To which the Rebbe answered, I have tens of thousands of only children in Israel, meaning all those who ever sent the Rebbe a note asking for a blessing to the Rebbe were an only child. And all of us, every single one of you, is an only child to God. And therefore, we shouldn't be worried what's going to happen. The Rebbe said, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai will protect us. The merit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai will protect us in this difficulty. And the end results were the greatest victory since the Maccabees. And that's what's going to happen now. There will be an even greater victory than in the time of the Maccabees. Because Iran, our greatest threat, will be completely embarrassed in one form or another. And the Abisha should help. We should not be intimidated. It's 57 years to the day, 57 verses in Parshas Bahar. And the Rebbe forewarned us that in this week, the United Nations was going to remove its protection from Israel. And he said, you won't need the United Nations to protect you. And this is what's happening now. The United Nations is against us. They're not protecting us. And the Rebbe said, fools, you don't need the United Nations to protect you. You've got something far greater, far bigger. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The creator of heaven and earth is protecting you. Don't be afraid. Don't be intimidated. It's 57. 57 exactly. 57 verses, 57 years. The events are the same. Don't be afraid.